Hello everybody, and welcome back to the Eternal Sonata playthrough. We've got the sand flowing through both sides of the double reed tower. And that means that finally we can access the location of the ruined body. Or at least what remains of Legato anyway. Now this is something that confuses me. So, the Elvis Tube is technically meant to be a better weapon for March, but it drops her attack. I think the idea is that it gives her much more powerful dark moves, but that's not how I work, because sometimes I might want to be in the light, I don't really know. So, I tend to actually avoid those weapons. You can tell which ones are sort of meant to be the best weapons in the game, because they've got a glow around them. So, if you were ever wondering which ones are meant to be the best ones in the game, that's your cue. But yeah, some of them, it's mostly with March and Salsa, if that's the case, where their best weapons are actually not their best weapons. But that might just be because I am using them in a way that maybe the game didn't necessarily intend. That really the only way that I see you getting through most of Eternal Sonata's battles is through brute force. So really, I don't see why you would be all that tactical, because you really don't necessarily need to be. I mean, perhaps you need to be more so during an encore mode playthrough, because that's infinitely more difficult, because I think it's like the enemies have something like 1.5 times their health, they do 1.5 times the damage, but they give out the same amount of experience. It's something along those lines. I can't 100% remember. I'll double check and look into it when we are going through the optional dungeon, which is actually beginning very, 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 very soon.
Nice to meet you.
Because basically, as soon as we have defeated the ruined body, we can actually enter that optional dungeon, and that's exactly what we're gonna do. Which is awesome. What's hilarious is that there's no actual way of telling that what's going to that you can enter that optional dungeon after you've beaten the boss. Because when you get an item, it doesn't tell you what to do with it, how you get it. I think the game doesn't even tell you how to access the location of the optional dungeon, which is a bit bizarre, I suppose. I think the idea is that you're kind of meant to just find it randomly yourself. But the one thing that is nice is that if you don't tackle the optional dungeon on your run through the game this time, the item that you're going to get will carry over into an encore mode playthrough, so you can immediately access the optional dungeon pretty much as soon as you get to the Noise Dunes of Fantasy. I would say that's probably a bit of a daft idea to go for it at that time, because, like, seriously, you are not going to be high enough level to deal with it. Especially not on encore mode. But really, I would say it's worthwhile tackling now, because also what that would mean is if you're going for all of the trophies and achievements and stuff, tackling it on the slightly easier mode of the game means that you're more likely to complete it. And also, there's a lot of stuff that is hidden away in the optional dungeon that is kind of required for completing an Encore mode playthrough. So if you didn't do it on this run, instead of managing to complete the game in 2 cycles, you would need at least 3, and obviously that would be a bit of a pain.
That was fun. Much better.
But yes, basically just what we're doing right now is just working our way slowly but surely all the way down to the basement of this tower. You can access it from either the west or the east, so really it doesn't matter. And actually, what is nice about the Double Reed Tower is that you can tackle any of those 4 mini-bosses that we faced in any order whatsoever. So you're not really limited in how you can choose to face this dungeon,
Perfectly polite when I send you flying.
which I do appreciate. I mean, it's one of the things that I absolutely love about Super Mario Odyssey, which I have been playing maybe a wee bit too much. Like, I got the game, fell in love with it, and kind of haven't put it down, which is probably not healthy, and I really should probably be focusing on other issues, i.e. recording the next playthrough, but it's just so damn fun that I can't put it down. But the point that I was about to make there, before I started gushing about Super Mario Odyssey, is that while it sets you up a goal in each of the kingdoms, there's so many power moons in it that you can tackle in any order whatsoever, and you're totally free to choose how you go about that. Obviously, I've made a comparison to, I think, Mario Odyssey before in this playthrough, but the same whole thing of comparing a platformer to a Japanese RPG not really working all that well stands here as well, because while Mario Odyssey is so open in how it lets you tackle pretty much everything, you generally can't have that level of freedom in a Japanese RPG. I mean, that said, I know that Square Enix are planning on pretty much blowing open the Japanese RPG in a way with, I think it's Octopath Traveler, because that's the whole thing. If you can play as like 8 different characters and basically create your own story, which is probably going to be the most open Japanese RPG ever. But obviously, Eternal Sonata it came out in the era of games and Japanese RPGs where really you didn't need to be all that open in terms of how you let people deal with things. That whole open world, open choice structure and idea is something that's become more prevalent in recent years, so it's pretty much been in the last 5 or 6 years or so that the open world has become such a big thing to so many games. So I mean, you certainly can't blame things like Eternal Sonata for being that bit more linear, but it is nice that in this final dungeon, and also in the optional dungeon as well, you can kind of tackle it however you like. This more so than the final, well, this more so than the optional dungeon, because that you're climbing up a tower and you've got to go through the levels one at a time. Whereas here you obviously get the choice of going up the east or the west tower and then hitting one of the 2 bosses there. But beating all of those mini bosses opened up the pathway here. And once we've climbed this sand staircase, a teleporter awaits for us, leading to the top floor of the tower. And on Hourglass Road, with time running out, it's time to head forward and take on the ruined body of Legato. Although obviously first, before I do any of that, just want to make sure that my item set's properly good. And then yeah, it's just a case of running forward. It does very much feel like we're about to face the final boss of the game. In actual fact, no, this is the penultimate boss fight in the game. There is one more. But this one is pretty epic. I have the strong suspicion that in the PS3 version of the game it would be more epic. Because obviously when you reach this point you would be facing down the ruined body of Legato and Count Watts. But either way, Legato's pretty far gone and we need to put a stop to him right now.
Okay, you're all ready for this, right? Let's go! Don't hold anything back.
And here we go. It's time to face down the ruined body. And it's pretty awesome because obviously he's so big! He can be quite dangerous. His slash attacks can be quite powerful. He has a similar issue of if you are kind of hitting between his legs you might miss. But obviously he is such a big target that you can deal with that. Now I believe that the musical piece during this battle is called Unbalanced. And it's a pretty awesome musical piece, like, oh, it's just brilliant. And actually, I would have to say it's probably one of my favourite songs in the game, actually. I mean, I would say that the one that sticks in my head the most is Make the Leap. But this is a pretty glorious track. And just kind of further cements the fact that Eternal Sonata has some pretty phenomenal music in it. And also, this boss fight cements that the game has some pretty awesome designs in it. Because I mean, when I look at the ruined body, it's a cross between a centaur, it's got a bit of Bahamut from the Final Fantasy games. I'm mostly thinking of... Actually no, I'm thinking of a mixture of the Bahamut because it's got a bit of the Bahamut from Final Fantasy X in it, which is the Bahamut that I always think of when I think of Bahamut. But it has got an element of the Bahamut from Final Fantasy XIII, in a way. But then it is its own thing. And it just looks really cool with its kind of like Velociraptor talons on the back. And the kind of buggy backside bit and all the things sticking off of it. It's quite ornate and very monstrous, and I think it's just a really fun fight. I do think that it probably would be more fun with Count Watts here, and obviously in the PS3 version he is. and also that makes more narrative sense and would feel a lot more narratively satisfying, for definite. But this is still pretty awesome. And obviously, it is only right that Allegretto, Polka and Jazz are the ones in this final fight against Legato. Because Allegretto is the hero, sort of our story. And he wants to fight back against everything that Count wants created, and the ruined body of Legato is one of them. It's right for Polka to get her revenge for what Legato and Count Waltz did to her, and it's right for Jazz to finish his job as the leader of the resistance by putting down the final monster of the war. So I think I chose quite a good team for this, I feel. And he is very nearly out of there.
See the feathers?
I mean, in a way, I feel really bad for Legato because he was merely following the orders of Count Waltz, and in ingesting that glowing Gogu Fury potion, it transformed him into a hideous monster that had no control over anything, and in his final moments he's just whimpering because, yes, although he does seem to keep regenerating something or other. But give it a few more hits and he will be 100% defeated. And there we go. The ruined body is no more. And we pretty much got people up to level 60 now, which is brilliant. Obviously Polka's still a little bit lower down there, but that don't matter. As is Jazz still, it seems. It's all good. Because we can now head on to our final boss fight if we choose to. Defeating the ruined body nets you the hero's crest, and it allows you to go through that portal to the end of the game. Now, as I said before, I'm not going to go to the end of the game now. If you don't want to take on the optional dungeon, go straight through that door and witness the end of the game. Be prepared for quite a lot of cutscenes. I would say that Eternal Sonata probably has the one of the longest ending cutscenes in gaming ever. So definitely make sure that you have prepared yourself if you're going to go and sit down through it. But that is your point of no return. If you don't turn back at this point, you'll finish the game. But obviously, I want to go take on that optional dungeon. And so, annoyingly, in order to do that, we have to run all the way back to the Noise Dunes of Fantasy and all the way back to that mysterious door. Because now that we have the hero's crest, we should actually be able to open it. Which is awesome, but it is annoying that we do have to do so much backtracking in order to get to it. I mean, I suppose it could be a lot worse, because when you get out of the base of the tower, you are spit out pretty much right near the entrance to the Double Reed Tower. But it is still quite a lot of running to do in order to enter the optional dungeon. But as I said, it's definitely worth doing. And if you've been really wanting a good challenge out of a Town Sonata, it's definitely where you're going to find it. So, let us get out of the Double Reed Tower, and in the next part, we're going to begin the true final stretch of this playthrough as we head towards the optional dungeon. See you then.